Hello, and my name's Robbie from the Bikepackist. In this video, I'm going to be giving you 11 top tips to get you through this winter cycling. Let's go. Tip number 1, dress for the occasion. So when I go out cycling in winter, I wear a lot. It's all about layering. So I wear a base layer, a long sleeve winter cycling jersey, proper bib tights made for winter riding. Obviously wear thermal socks, shoes, overshoes, gloves, a cycling cap, a windproof, a gilet, and sometimes I even wear a down gilet as well if it's really cold. So when I am riding, if I do get too warm, I take some stuff off, put it in my frame bag, and I'm good to carry on. It's all about keeping the right temperature, and going out being cold and trying to warm up is just not the way to go about it. Tip number 2, tin foil and double gloving. So no matter how well you dress, a lot of people do suffer with cold hands and cold feet. So if you suffer with cold feet, wear 2 pairs of socks, and in between those socks put some tin foil. Keeps the heat in and your feet are going to be nice and toasty all day. Double gloving, what I mean by that is when you go out riding in winter, if your gloves get too sweaty or too wet, they start taking all that cold air in, they make your hands really cold. So me personally, I like to go out with 2 pairs of gloves. One very thick winter gloves and the other quite thin. So if I'm out riding and the thick winter gloves get wet and start making my hands really cold, take them off, then I put the lighter gloves on, let the other ones dry out a little bit and then swap them back. Tip number 3, consider an indoor trainer. So I appreciate that cycling for many people is about getting out into the big outdoors and enjoying nature. But in winter, for many of us, like myself who lives in the UK, that isn't always possible because it can just be too icy or too rainy and you don't want to go out and have a really miserable time. So an indoor trainer is going to give you the ability to go online onto applications like Zwift. You're going to be able to do some really structured workouts. And although you might not be outside enjoying fresh coffee from your local cafe, you're still going to be getting those miles in and you're going to keep that Christmas weight off if you're someone like me that really does love to indulge this time of the year. Tip number 4, join a gym. So one of the biggest concerns for many people I train for ultra cycling and bikepacking over winter is, Rob, I don't really have the money or the space for a turbo trainer. What do I do to stay fit over winter? Join a gym. Not only can you use their bikes, but you've also got loads of classes to go to as well. Spin classes, yoga, Pilates, core strength classes, legs, bums and tums. There's loads of stuff you can do that is really going to benefit your cycling. And if you don't like classes, just go and use the strength training equipment yourself under the guidance of a PT or watching some YouTube videos to make sure that you're working properly. The gym is a fantastic place for building strength as a cyclist, and it gives you the time to really work on components of your body that you might have neglected because you were too busy getting ready for an event in summer. Tip number 5, don't think, just do it. So one thing I really struggled with years ago when it came to winter cycling is I would literally talk myself out of going on long bike rides. I'd wake up and I'd check the conditions and think, yeah, it's okay for cycling. I'd sit there, I'd have 1 coffee, 2, I'd, go and chat to the missus, I'd sit there pestering the dog, all that kind of thing. And I'd sit there, it's gonna be cold, it could rain, and I would make up so many excuses in my mind not to go out on that bike ride, because I knew for the first 20 minutes it was going to be a bit miserable and cold. I eventually learned that the best way to go about it, providing the conditions are good to be outside, is just to get on with it. Get up, have your breakfast, get the bike ready, and just go. Don't think about it, just go. Because you can so easily talk yourself out of a really decent training ride. Tip number 6, be safe and be seen. So winter is really tough for cyclists, but it's also challenging for drivers too. They have less daylight hours, there's typically more cars on the road because people aren't walking or cycling in, and on top of that you've got icy windows and mist taking over the inside of your car. So it can be really challenging for them to see you. So you need to do everything you can to make sure you can be seen. So for me personally, I wear loads of high-vis clothing, loads of reflective stuff, and I have bright lights on day and obviously night. The most important thing that I think is, yes, there's a lot of negligence by drivers on the road. I've nearly been hit twice by people that haven't bothered to de-ice their window. But if you can do the best possible job of making yourself seen, you have the best possible chance of that driver not doing anything silly. So make sure to wear some really bright stuff and make sure you're seen so you know you can do the best job you can of looking after yourself. Tip number 7, equip your bike for winter. So many cyclists, when it starts getting pretty awful on the condition side of things, start changing their bike to compensate for that. So when winter comes around, many people put fenders on their bike, they decide to go with bigger, wider tyres that are a little bit more grippy, and some people even start adding loads of lighting and a frame bag for any extra clothing they have. I highly recommend doing this because it just makes the winter riding a little bit more comfortable, and for the people around you, if you're riding in a group, having fenders does go a long way as well. Tip number 8, ride off-road. So when winter comes around for me, as much as I love road cycling, I am someone that's inclined to going on my gravel bike or my mountain bike so I can go on off-road trails. The first reason being, I feel a bit safer on them when it comes to ice and cars on the road, and also it's just nice to switch it up and do something a little bit more challenging. And typically in winter the trails are pretty solid around where I live, so I actually have a really fun experience and it's something to look forward to in winter. So off-road riding in winter, big thumbs up. Tip number 9, know when to stay inside. So unfortunately, this one took me way longer to learn than it should have done. So I used to go out and I didn't care about the conditions. It could have been sheet ice and I'd still be out on my road bike on my summer tyres. I had some small slips where the bike just went out under me, and I soon realised that I was just stupid really. You know, the conditions were too bad. What I should have done was I should have gone and got a day pass at my local gym, which was the same price as a coffee I was going out to get. And I should have gone and done something there, even if it was just some stretching or strength and conditioning or using an exercise bike. It would have been way more beneficial than going out, getting super cold and just hurting myself. So know when to pick your battles, and if the weather and the condition is terrible, just let it go. You know, you've got the whole of winter to train. If you're gonna miss one session, do it on the day that the weather conditions are terrible. Tip number 10, stay on top of nutrition and hydration. So if you ask my friends, they will tell you I am the king for neglecting my nutrition and hydration, and I was years ago. I used to go out and ride for 3 or 4 hours and I never even used to bother taking water. I'd have a coffee or two while out on the ride and I wouldn't even eat anything. It was terrible, and by the time I got home, I felt poorly and I was raiding the kitchen like there's nothing else. In the past probably 6 months, I've gotten much better, and I make sure I'm always out with water, I've always got snacks on me, and the difference that's made is huge. In winter though, you really do need to make sure that you stay on top of it. Just because it's cold doesn't mean you should stop drinking. Just because you're not in the mood and your hands are shivering doesn't mean you shouldn't be eating. If you stay on top of your nutrition and hydration, not only is your body going to be warmer because it can fuel keeping itself warm, but you're going to have a much better time. So trust me, although you might not want to eat and drink, you have to. And finally, tip number 11, keep on top of your bike maintenance. So you'll notice that many cyclists have a summer and a winter bike. This is because winter conditions just destroy bike components. You're going to go through chains, cassettes and chain rings much quicker, and also the bearings all over your bike are going to suffer as well in wet, gritty conditions. So it's not only important to maybe even consider using a second bike where the components are cheaper to replace, but also just to keep on top of your bike maintenance. So it's really important to keep your bike clean. It's good to check that your tyres don't have any flint in before and after a ride. And on top of that, make sure that your chain isn't wearing out too quickly. It's got plenty of oil on. And any bearings, get them before they start to go, because the last thing you need is to be going home and hearing all this nasty clicking and crunching, and you've realised that the bearings that you could have just re-greased and repaired are now past their point and they're completely destroyed. So thanks for taking the time to watch the video today. Make sure to subscribe to the Bike Packist and we'll catch up soon.